Welcome to the riskadvisor.com podcast. I am Jim Henry, and here with my good friend and co-host, Sal Lafreri. Today's topic, technical surveillance countermeasures, or TSCM, is the work of providing sweeps to detect, locate, and nullify unauthorized surveillance devices such as transmitters, recording devices, wiretaps, hidden cameras, or other eavesdropping threats. Most people think that this is spy novel stuff, but in reality, it is a critical area that most security directors and corporate leadership pay little attention to until it's too late. So, Sal, this is definitely an area that you spent a good part of your career. Is that really true? It's always until it's too late?
Always until it's too late. The big problem we always used to see, and I'm sure our guest today will confirm this, is people always say, I have nothing nobody wants. Why would they steal from me? And they just don't recognize the value of it. And it's just amazing from either competitive intelligence, when you look at international, when you're talking about state-sponsored stuff, when people are working on government contracts. So it's the bigger stuff. But even at the smaller level, and people say, well, why would somebody want to know what I'm up to and what am I doing? I'm not that important. And then they get hurt, and they get hurt big time. And that becomes the problem. But it's way more prevalent than we think. And as technology grows, and I'm sure we'll get into this, as technology grows, you wind up seeing these devices become smaller and smaller and more sophisticated in the capabilities. Early on, you had to be able to have a battery that was able to run, and you had to be able to get into a facility to plant the device. And then you had to go back and be able to get it out. Where now, you don't even need to get there. You can run on power from the building. You can run on PoE systems. You could do all kinds of stuff with this. So it's some pretty interesting stuff. And I always got a kick out of playing with it. So, but anyway, want to introduce our guest?
Certainly. So Charles Patterson is our guest today. He is the founder and president of Exec Security TSCM. Charles began working in the security field in 1978 in executive protection and technical services. His responsibility included traveling on security details through the United States and to over 40 different countries, as well as providing technical support for a number of electronic security systems. So, Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Can you explain to us what technical surveillance countermeasures, TSCM, is and why the sweeps are necessary?
Sure. TSCM is the abbreviation, as you said, for technical surveillance countermeasures, which are all long words. But if you break it down, technical surveillance, and you want to have countermeasures against any kind of surveillance. Now, surveillance can be all kinds of things. There could be somebody just watching you from down the street. But in technical surveillance, especially as Sal alluded to, technology today offers so many opportunities for people to conduct some kind of surreptitious surveillance, unauthorized, from cameras to microphones, recording devices, all types of things can be a threat. And also, as Sal was saying too, a lot of people think they don't have much to hide, but then once something happens, for instance, if it's a small business, they may think they're just a small business, but their clients may be handling work for much larger corporations. So even a small business has concerns. A medium business undergoing a merger or an acquisition, there's information there that would be highly valuable to a competitor or any kind of adversary.
And the availability of the devices. I mean, at one time it was, relatively sophisticated devices that you had. I know when I consult with, with people and they have a concern regarding, some type of hostile surveillance that's taking place, especially if it's electronic, and they think they have an idea of who might be doing it. I always ask, what's the technical capability of that person? Are we looking at an idiot that, can go online and buy something for $15? Or are we talking about somebody that's got a whole lot better technical capability? Because then the attack becomes that much more sophisticated. And when you're doing the sweep, I'm sure you'll get into it when you're doing the sweep, you start thinking about what's the level of the sophistication you're going against. If you're going against state-sponsored as compared to, the jealous boyfriend.
Right.
So, it's kind of, it's a problem. Talk to us about, security related incidents. In pre-production, we had talked about, different types of incidents, different types of, causations for buggings. So talk to us a little bit about what those related incidents are.
So when there's some kind of an incident that occurred just in general security, people may think, somebody broke in, therefore we're just going to have to lock our doors. Maybe somebody's purse was stolen or something like that. But there could have been something else going on. A big concern whenever we come to a client's facility is to understand how well secure are they in their facility. Do they have good access control? Do they have camera systems in place? Do they have guards in place? What are their policies and procedures? Because all of that is helpful in protecting their facility, as well as understanding how someone might have breached that if someone was trying to attack them to get some information out. If video cameras show that someone has been going in and out of a boardroom prior to or after a meeting, what were they doing there? Were they just cleaning, or, did they have reason to be there? Maybe they were planting a recording device.
Sometimes these are done as a result of requirements, right? They're compliance issues, and they have to be, ensuring that they're doing, taking all the steps necessary. But sometimes it's not, and getting them to make that jump, go over that first hurdle to understand that, something may have been taken, becomes somewhat of an issue for them. Again, it goes back to they think that we don't know what there's just nothing for us to take. But you bring up a strong point. If you have a company that's doing, you may not necessarily be the target. It's the information that you have that becomes the target. We had a situation, and you talk about mergers and acquisitions, where an accounting firm was doing some record keeping and cleaning up some records for a company. What they want, what the bugging was about, and the attempts to get the information out wasn't to bring down the accounting company. It was to bring down that one particular client and find out what they had. And that's where we lose part of that.
So, Charles, we're now about 6 months into this, into COVID, with a lot of CEOs working from home. So, I would imagine that, some of the risks, have been abated about people, unknown people getting into boardrooms and whatnot at the place of business, where they could be putting in listening devices. But, I'd imagine that there's also increased vulnerabilities, at home, especially with homes that might not have a great distance between them and adjoining buildings, or what have you. And, are the CEOs, are they lured into a level of security that is a false level of security, that because they are at home, they're not as at risk?
It could very well be. Typically, homes are not as well protected as the corporate office would be, in terms of security, in terms of guards, in terms of access control. So now that the executives have moved home, of course, if they're on a Zoom call or a teleconferencing call, there's concerns with perhaps their IT and the management of their network. But at the same time, everything that they're talking about on that Zoom call or on some other, call in their home office, that's the same content that used to take place in the boardroom or in the executive office. But now they're at home. Could someone have gotten up to their house to plant something? Do they have cleaners? Do they have housekeepers? Any work going on in the house? All of these things could be a concern. And just in general, they now have moved the target out of the office and over to their home. So before the COVID problems, we were regularly scheduled for boardrooms and executive offices for a lot of corporations. When they locked down, those jobs stopped, but now we're getting calls to come out to the executives' homes just to take a look, just to make sure. And also it helps provide a baseline. If we've been there once, we don't try to be intrusive at all. As much as possible, we try to work with the situation. But if something happens later, if there happens to be a car parked nearby that seems suspicious, if they happen to see somebody walking through their yard, if we've already been there once, it'll be much easier to come back in and double check to make sure nothing has been planted or left behind.
Right. And with most homes being of wood frame construction, not as sealed or screened, RF wise, the ability to snoop from a greater distance is
that's true. And also, people are particularly an executive may have a vacation home as well, or they may be going away for a little bit, even during COVID. So their house may have been empty, or left somewhat open for a while. Now they're coming back. Now they better try to make sure that everything's safe.
Well, even one of the things that, always surprises me is when people bug themselves and they don't even realize it. I've had multiple clients where you go in and they're concerned about, at the home, they're concerned about somebody coming in and planting a device and listening, and you give them kudos for that. And then as you're doing the sweep, you realize that they got a nanny cam, or the one, my favorite was always the baby room monitor, right?
Right.
Because the baby room monitor would always be, parents would take that thing, they'd put it next to the crib. The microphone on it is incredibly sensitive because they want to be able to hear every breath that the child is taking. And they take the little receiver and they put it on their hip, and they think that transmitter is transmitting only to the receiver on their hip. When in reality, it's a radio transmitter. And you could be a quarter of a mile away and listening to everything that's going on. And it's on all the time. They never turn it off. And they wind up bugging themselves. So, you try and explain to them that, sometimes you don't even have to get into the home to put the device in. If you're going to do half of the job for me.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that we look for also when we're doing a sweep, any kind of vulnerability, and all those things that you mentioned and more, we find on a regular basis, something that was unintended but has left them open, whether it be at a home or in the office. We're always trying to pay attention to that. It could be an air vent that extends to maybe an apartment next door or an office next door. And then someone could put their ear to the vent and hear everything that's going on. Those kind of things happen.
Well, camera systems now that you can hang on a Wi-Fi network.
Right.
And it's got audio to it.
A lot of people are using cordless phones at their home, and most cordless phones these days are digital and maybe encrypted, but still a lot of people have older things out there or something that may not be functioning right and still may be broadcasting or, as you said, bugging themselves.
It's true. All right. Well, we just want to remind the people listening that you're all listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by Jim Henry and me, Sal Lafreri. We invite you to comment on our blog and at theriskadvisor.com, and to subscribe and follow us on our social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you're interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event, either in person or virtually, we can definitely set that up. And if you are interested in that, please go to the webpage, theriskadvisor.com, and help set that up. So let's get into segment 2, and let's talk about what are the different categories of sweeps, the different types of inspections. They normally fall into a couple of different categories. Talk to us about the categories. I think the first one being probably proactive.
Yeah, so we found we're contracted to do sweeps. There's usually 3 categories. The first being, as you said, the proactive inspection, where it's not that they think anything necessarily has been going on, but they just want to be sure. It could be due diligence. Particularly, a lot of companies are dealing with millions and even billions in investments. They owe it to their shareholders to ensure that they're taking the best steps possible by coming in on a regular basis.